My once trusted wife and her lover conspired to tear our family apart. After a series of fierce confrontations and painful revelations, I must decide whether to forgive and how to rebuild my life. Thank you for your subscription and likes. What would you do if it were you? You can leave your thoughts in the comments section in a dimly lit corner of the ballroom. I watched a couple gracefully gliding across the dance floor. Their eyes were glued to each other. They were having a silent conversation. The woman's chest rose and fell with each step, and her partner pulled her closer than she expected. Her slender figure perfectly matched his large one, creating a stunning contrast. Their movements were elegant and smooth like in a choreographed dance. He moved with the agility of an athlete and she followed his every move with precision. All eyes in the room were riveted on them, mesmerized by the emotional connection that seemed to radiate between them. It might not be love, but there was something undeniably strong about the way they moved together. The bond between them went beyond simple friendship. Her honey blonde locks cascaded like a light tide as she leaned towards him, but not of her own free will. She was held tightly by her attractive boss watching them together. I couldn't help but feel a pain of jealousy. After 11 years of marriage, the sight of my wife in his arms made me angry and humiliated. Attending the annual awards and appreciation banquet at her company had become a kind of tradition for us. It was no secret to everyone who worked there that she was my wife. As we all sat and watched the performance, I felt eyes searching for me in the crowd, anticipating some kind of skirmish. After a few dances, they left the dance floor together, joining other colleagues at a table in the center of the hall. I couldn't help but notice how she was looking at him with a familiar intensity in her eyes, a look that had previously been intended only for me. I hadn't seen them for a very long time, but the disgust inside me was still strong. All I could think about was that the inevitable was coming. The tension was building up like in a kettle that is about to boil. I needed to hold on a little longer. The attempt to balance fear, anger, and bitterness towards the current situation with the love, admiration, and faith that I once felt for my wife turned out to be unsuccessful. Despite all my efforts, I couldn't get rid of these conflicting emotions, but as I watched her walk away without deigning to look at me, I was overwhelmed by a wave of despair and self-pity. I hung my head feeling defeated after all the efforts I had put in to try to fix our broken marriage. Despite my countless attempts to arrange dates, do household chores, have meaningful conversations, and make romantic gestures, she continued to distance herself. The flowers, notes, and love cards I left for her were thrown away without a second thought. Even sending flowers to her workplace did not elicit any response from her. Standing behind Mary at the makeshift bar in the corner of the room, I couldn't help but wonder if my wife had received the flowers I sent. Now all I had to do was wait. Pushing these thoughts out of my head, I tried to keep an impassive look and asked Mary if she was having fun. She mentioned that Harold likes free drinks at these annual parties, and I couldn't help but smile and nod. In agreement, I reached for my empty glass, repeating Mary's actions. Me too, I replied, absent. The absence of Jason's wife, who always brought elegance and joy to our conversations, did not go unnoticed. Have I seen Jason's wife today? I asked, trying to hide my concern. Mary leaned towards me, her words slightly blurred from the alcohol. Oh, didn't Kelsey mention that Jason handed his wife the divorce papers? Today, it seems like she was neglecting her marital duties. Mary's revelation hit me like a brick, but it seemed that due to intoxication, she did not pay attention to the weight of her words. I was pleasantly surprised by the results. After all, it's Friday night. As soon as I got home from work, we rushed here without even having time to really discuss anything. Perhaps I exaggerated a little when I said that we took the day off to prepare for the evening. She had plenty of opportunities to raise this issue, but she decided not to. I poured myself another whiskey and Coke, picked up a glass of white wine for Kelsey, and headed over to the table where she and Jason were chatting. They were so engrossed in each other that neither of them noticed my approach. Kelsey, I brought you a glass of wine, I said, handing her the glass. She jumped slightly in surprise and exclaimed, "Oh, you scared me." She took the glass from me and thanked me, but the awkward tension in the room was palpable. The others tried to avoid a contact, showing a sudden interest in the stained tablecloth or something else on the other side of the room. While we stood there feeling awkward, I caught curious glances from those around me, expressing doubt in my thoughts and obvious ignorance. A young man no older than 25 was openly grinning as he watched me look at the table. Our eyes met for a moment, maintaining a silent connection, after which his smile faded and he turned his attention to the tablecloth. The clock was approaching 1:00 in the morning, which meant the end of the holiday day, and the guests began to leave the hotel lobby heading home. It was obvious that Kelsey wasn't quite ready to finish the dance with her partner. "We should probably go home, dear. I still need to drop off the babysitter, and we promised her that we wouldn't go out later than 2 today," I said, realizing that I was taking up her time spent with Jason. "Okay, I think we should go see you on Monday," she replied with a smile. It was nice to know that this awkward moment was coming to an end for everyone involved. "It was nice to see you, Jason." I held out my hand and he met it with a firm handshake. Despite the fact that he was trying to demonstrate his strength through his grip, I could say that I had a physical advantage. I was a little taller and heavier than him. While maintaining a contact, I sensed a hint of deception and complacency in his gaze. After a moment, he let go of my hand and wished us good night. I said goodbye to the group as we left the room and headed for the car. The ride home was quiet, but Kelsey's beaming smile lit up the darkness. Upon arriving home, Kelsey immediately went to check on her daughter Caitlin, and I took care of Brittany and prepared to take her home. When I returned, I found Kelsey already sound asleep in bed. After checking on Caitlin, I quickly went to the bathroom and then retired to a spare room for the night. I already knew that there could be no intimacy between us today. It's been so long since we've been in each other's arms. I closed my eyes. The ceiling image disappeared and I fell asleep while my mind was busy with tasks that I needed to solve. The next day, when I woke up early on Saturday morning, I found Caitlin already in the living room engrossed in her favorite cartoon. I waved at her from the doorway, asking if she had already had breakfast. "Yes," she replied enthusiastically, waving a spoon dipped in milk and accidentally sprinkling drops on the carpet. I reminded her to calm down because Mom is still asleep and I have to work in the office. "Okay, Dad," she replied too loudly, making me giggle at her rampage. Around 8:30 a.m. on Saturday, I contacted my lawyer on my cell phone. "Good morning, Bill. This is Matthew Franks." I greeted him. "Good morning, Matt. I think it's not a happy call," he replied, already guessing the reason for my appeal, confirming his suspicions. I informed him, "That's right. It's time to put the plan into action. I found out that Jason filed for divorce yesterday. Do you think Kelsey met with the lawyer?" Bill replied, "I don't think so, but I'll contact her and clarify. Let's meet in 30 minutes at the coffee shop. My assistant will ask you to sign in the notarized forms. We'll file the paperwork on Monday morning and then we'll serve her at lunch." "Good plan. See you soon." I said. I arrived at the coffee shop early, greeting the barista with a faint smile. I ordered and settled into a cozy armchair by the fireplace. My thoughts were in the air as I reflected on the unexpected turn my life had taken. I never thought that I would divorce the only true love of my life. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment when you realize that your cozy life is about to change, but you can make an assumption. For me, it was a traffic ticket. One of those annoying fines that a camera issues for running a red light. The photo showed the driver, the license plate of the car, as well as the date and time of the violation. When I received the fine in the mail, I grinned and immediately realized that it was Kelsey's doing. When she was in a hurry, she always turned on the headlights. I hesitated before opening the message, knowing that the only reaction to it would be tears. A direct encounter with this situation would only lead to trouble. In the photo, Kelsey was sitting next to a man whose face was hidden. Even though I couldn't make out his features, I recognized him immediately. It would seem that the usual moment is perhaps they are having lunch or we're going to a meeting, but something about the date and time March 5th alerted me. Not so long ago, I was flipping through my phone when I came across our text messages from the 5th. She planned to stop by Mary's place after work to buy clothes for Kate. It seemed like a common thing because Mary's daughter was a little older and we often received nice gifts from them. Although I usually remembered Mary bringing things to work, I didn't think much of it at the time. "Don't worry, do you want me to cook dinner?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "What time should I wait for you?" "Well, I think I'll be a little late." She replied, "Okay, let's have some fun there." "Thank you, we'll take care of it," she said with a smile. At that time, I found an intersection on Google Maps that was on the other side of the city from Mary's house. But maybe it's just a coincidence, right? As I put all the evidence together, it became increasingly difficult for me to ignore the signs. Kelsey had been lying low since November, and our quarrels over the holidays were becoming more frequent by January. She stopped being interested in how I held her hand when we went shopping or walked together. Our conversations gradually turned to work or Caitlin, leaving behind discussions of our aspirations, family vacations, and plans for the future. I was lucky that since childhood, I had a trust fund, which arose thanks to my great-grandfather's wise investment in undeveloped lands in the Pacific Northwest. As the city expanded, he sold some of the land back to the community, and after his death, I inherited the fruits of his visionary decisions. Initially, hundreds of thousands of dollars were invested in the fund, which continued to grow after my grandfather's death. Due to the self-sufficiency of my family, I have never had to use this fund. The balance of funds remained stable and even increased slightly over time due to accrued interest. After the death of my father and mother, I inherited all their property and easily combined it with my own investments. Despite the accumulated wealth, the three of us were on the verge of settling down for life, but Kelsey and I decided to keep working and increase our wealth in the run-up to retirement. When we got married, I took care of signing a prenuptial agreement to secure our funds. Over the years, we regularly updated the prenuptial agreement and wills. One of the points that never changed was the standard divorce clause, ensuring that in the event of a divorce, our assets would remain divided. In the event of my death or divorce, special provisions have been developed regarding the circumstances of my death. Kelsey wouldn't have gotten any benefits if she had been involved in my demise. To ensure fairness and protection, I have been using the legal and financial services of a reliable family lawyer for many years. While preparing for a possible divorce, I turned to a lawyer for advice, and I was referred to the best local divorce lawyer. I set up a meeting with them at the end of the week to discuss possible options, knowing that our prenuptial agreement would be a solid foundation for any legal proceedings. I wasn't worried about my finances, Matt. One option is to hire a private investigator to figure out the situation and find out if there is cause for concern. Unfortunately, all my detectives are busy with other cases right now, so it may take several weeks before they can take on yours. I understand that you are worried and don't want to wait, so let's consider other possibilities. The lawyer said there's one person who fits this description. He's trying to start from scratch, but few people believe in him. We call him Larry. The nasty Bill told me he is a former police officer who was fired for various complaints and suspicious behavior. Although he can be hired right away, I hesitate to approve a long-term collaboration with him. Why the nickname Scoundrel? I asked, grinning. I prefer to keep everything under control if we are to move forward. It is important to have concrete evidence, for fortunately he does not go beyond the law. He is able to collect information such as detailed photos, videos, emails, and phone calls that may go beyond what is allowed by law. I was informed that his findings often serve as indisputable proof of infidelity. The lawyer said we could offer him a payment to complete our business with him and move on to a more reliable private investigator over the next few weeks. He suggested. I thought for a moment. Do you think he can start working for us today? I asked. I will contact him to confirm this. I will act as an intermediary in this situation in the office. I'll give you the latest news later today. Bill offered. Sounds like a plan. Thanks. I said. I filled out various forms for the lawyer, and the person submitted them to my accountant and deducted the fee from a separate business account, not from my personal one. Kelsey didn't know what I was up to because she didn't have access to the information. I didn't want to alarm her, as especially if my suspicions turned out to be unfounded. Because our marriage was already going through hard times during this period, I decided to work on improving my relationship with my wife. Thanks to my life experience, I realized that sudden changes in behavior usually occur after some significant event. Not knowing what caused these changes in my wife and not being sure that our relationship could not be fixed, I decided to try anyway. I made a conscious decision to make our relationship a priority by assuming the role of a caring and attentive partner. I devoted myself to showing my love and appreciation for her, striving to become the kind of husband her friends would envy. Despite my efforts, it became clear that our relationship had reached a breaking point. On Thursday afternoon, I was asked to stop by Bill's office to discuss our next steps. The detective discovered a treasure trove of evidence. Hours of video footage captured them together in intimate moments, port betraying a happy couple, photos, phone records, and personal emails painted an eerie picture. Watching what was happening, I was torn between admiration for the cunning of the villains and disgust at their betrayal. The nickname they had earned seemed too appropriate. I sat there not believing that everything was like that. I never would have thought that such a thing was possible. Trying to figure out what could have attracted her to him, I couldn't help but mention his physical characteristics: tall, handsome, well-built. He was well-educated and progressed confidently both in his career and in his personal life. About a year ago, he took over Kelsey's department, having previously worked as her personal assistant. His close working relationship with Kelsey allowed him to integrate into her life. Jason was an outstanding baseball player in college and planned to go to graduate school, but a shoulder injury sustained in his senior year forced him to change direction. It was hard not to be impressed by his success. I never thought Kelsey would let him come between us. The situation was too complicated. I felt suffocated. My chest was constricted and my vision was blurred. I was afraid that I might lose consciousness. Desperate for relief, I pushed back my chair and bent over, pressing my head between my knees, trying to even out my breathing. Inhale, exhale, until consciousness cleared. The feeling of loss and emptiness was indescribable. I just lost my beloved, my partner, my lover, and the mother of our child. At that moment I felt trapped, and then it only got worse. Bill turned on a recording made the day before in which Jason talks about his desire for them to be together. "Do you really love me?" Her voice was full of anticipation. "Yes, my dear, you are the epitome of perfection. I adore you and I dream that we will create a family. So you, me and Caitlin, absolutely." He replied. "What do you think of Matt and Shannon?" She asked. "Let's divorce them. You'll get Caitlin and we can start living a happy family." The conversation fell silent while Kelsey digested the shocking news she had received from her partner. "You really love me, don't you, Kelsey?" he asked. "Yes, of course," she replied. "I've never thought about leaving Matt before. We just think about it," he urged. "He will never be able to give you what I can give. You will become the beauty of any ball, a part of high society. We will have the opportunity to visit such places and experience things that he could not even dream of." I heard the contempt in his tone and imagined the expression on his face when he uttered these words. The thought of losing Kate devastated me. My daughter is my whole world. I will be a much better father than this loser, who can't even hope. After a year she won't even want to visit him. Jason said, "Why do you despise him so much? What did he do to you?" There was a hint of concern in her voice. "To be honest, I was curious too. Not worthy of you, Kelsey." He replied simply, "This man is devoid of ambition and shows no interest in going beyond his current position. He seems content to be a simple hard worker, contributing to someone else's wealth." Jason said, "Did you know that he holds the position of factory director? His factory employs 400 people and has achieved the highest production and profit per square foot compared to other factories." I was pleased to hear that Kelsey knew about this, although I would have preferred this conversation to take place in a more appropriate setting, such as in their dining room. "In my opinion, he looks weak-willed and not assertive enough," he replied. "A beta male devoid of drive and ambition in school, unable to get an MBA, who has served his time, is easily trampled into the mud any day of the week." He continued mockingly, "Jason, don't kid yourself that you're taller than Matt. He is not a weakling. His early life is unknown to you. He hung out with bad people, was good with guns, and almost turned down a dark path until he finally decided to pursue education." This revelation seemed to make her feel proud. "He's stronger and more resilient than you think. Please assure me that you will not engage in physical combat with him. I don't want any of you to get hurt. He's thinking about Kate and you're thinking about me. I can't deny my feelings for him. I wish things were different, But you took his place as my partner, my love. She paused, considering the logic of the situation. How will all this happen and when? What is it, she asked. We will end our marriages at the same time. I need to make some preparations before I officially file for divorce from Shannon. He replied, given her psychiatric problems and lack of intimacy in the last year, it won't be difficult to split everything equally. She's unlikely to protest. Jason said, of course, but first you need to start the divorce process with Shannon. She was careful, preferring stability rather than risking her current lifestyle, even for the sake of the man she truly loved. Okay, now, come here, my dear. He said. I asked to stop recording because I didn't need to listen to it anymore. Turning to Bill, I asked what I should do. He advised me to take the first step, but I expressed concern that he might change his mind. Bill reassured me by saying that this was unlikely, as they had reached the point where nothing could change their minds for the first time. I watched the detective closely. A man in his 30s, in good shape, athletic, impeccably dressed, in a well-fitting suit. It wasn't what I expected at all. He was polite and didn't seem to have made a mistake in his assessment. I realized gradually I began to perceive him as Larry and not as an insidious person. I felt that he was genuinely pursuing my interests, despite the fact that I was the one paying the bill. He looked worried and shocked by the behavior and words of the other two people. Would you really like to get it now, knowing what you know? Larry asked. You're probably right, Larry. I agreed and turned the bill. Give me a day or two to think about it and I'll call you. Okay, that sounds good, Matt. Bill replied. Do I need to start describing the outline of the document and then add details, or should I stop the process if necessary? The lawyer asked. Let's focus on the first option. I replied. Larry came over and handed me his business card. Here's my personal number, Mr. Franks. Don't hesitate to contact us if you need anything, he suggested. Please just call me. Matt. I replied. Thanks, Matt. Larry replied. I know some people who can help you in your quest for revenge if you choose this path. It's not for nothing that I have such a nickname, he added with a grin. It was nice to meet you, Larry. If I need help, I will definitely contact you. I really appreciate your offer, although I don't think I can go through with it and hurt Kelsey. It's nice to know that I have a friend to turn to. If I change my mind, I replied. Larry smiled and waved goodbye as he headed for his car. The decision weighed on me all weekend. It was hard for me to focus on anything else, and Kay didn't seem to notice that I was thinking about the future of our family. It dawned on me that she might have already made a decision for all of us. I was filled with doubts, anger, fear, and disappointment. The most painful thing was the humiliation and the feeling of losing a sense of masculinity. My whole personality revolved around my job and my family. Who would I be without them? The thought of Caitlin moving on to the next chapter without me bothered me a lot, and the thought of this arrogant man raising my daughter made me furious. I imagined him walking my daughter down the aisle on her wedding day. My emotions were in a complete mess, and no amount of alcohol could bring me clarity. It wasn't until Sunday morning, sitting on the back porch of the house and wincing from a headache, that I realized that I was most likely going to lose my wife. Despite all my attempts to resist, I saw the contempt in her eyes and realized that I had already lost my family. Now it only remained to determine how and under what circumstances I would lose everything. Suddenly, a familiar saying came to mind: lead, follow, or get out of the way. I did not want to retreat, and I did not want to blindly follow these treacherous people, and I had only one way out: to take responsibility and lead. On Monday morning, I called Bill to discuss our situation. Hi Bill, it's Matt Franks calling. I said, good morning, Matt. Have you made any progress in solving the problem? He asked. Yes, I have a plan. I need you to fill out all the necessary paperwork, including the legal photos that Larry sent was split at 50-50. I explained. There was a short silence, after which he asked, are you offering to sell the house? I confirmed yes. We used the lowest loan from my trust fund to buy it, essentially paying ourselves. Any profit we receive will be divided equally. I will pay off the entire loan amount along with the interest that we have accumulated over the years. In addition, I will transfer $20,000 to Kelsey from my trust as a token of gratitude. Perhaps this gesture will soften her attitude, because she will know that she will not be left completely without means of livelihood. I am determined to get primary custody of Kate, although I understand the difficulties that await me. Perhaps Larry will be able to reveal compromising information about Jason that will cast doubt on his suitability as the father of a little girl. I said I heard that he was a popular fraternity member in college. Perhaps he let his success turn his head. I hope Larry can talk to him about it. I have a backup plan for Kate if we fail to obtain primary custody. Please draw up as detailed a joint custody agreement as possible. I paused briefly to give Bill a chance to remember. In addition, I am considering suing Jason for emotional alienation and involving his wife Shannon in the situation. I want her to be aware of the situation. As for her, I want you to come up with a new divorce plan based on her cheating. I'm willing to pay for it. She deserves to be held accountable for her actions. I said angrily. We can hand the papers to both of them in a separate room, but I know that won't solve all the problems. Bill said I also need her to sign a contract with me. I added I can start filling out the necessary forms, even without her cooperation. I can do a lot. Bill detailed I understand. I just want to stir things up a bit. I want to file a lawsuit against Kelsey's company for allowing her to enter into a relationship with her boss. I am concerned that there are no moral standards in the company that would prevent such behavior, especially given the dynamics of power in relations with her immediate superior. I understand that this may not lead to any significant consequences, but it is important to resolve this issue and see what can be done. I added, Matt, be prepared for potentially high costs and increased expenses while we resolve this issue. Bill warned me I have to make sure that these two don't get more money than they are rightfully owed. As my father always said, when you hire a lawyer, you're essentially negotiating a price. Finished. Bill laughed at my sarcastic comment about lawyers agreeing that my father was wise. Remember, you don't have to give her the funds from your trust thanks to a secure prenuptial agreement. He reminded. I know about it, Bill. After thinking about it over the weekend, I came to the conclusion that without burdening her financially, I could make her more supportive of my requests, and frankly she deserves it. She put in a lot of effort and supported me while we both saved money for the future. I hoped it would give her an advantage over Jason, and she wouldn't have to depend on him so much when she was on her own. She really deserves better, but I'm not going to let that liar Jason take more from me than he's already taken. I grimaced as I expressed my thoughts, feeling that my wife should have been all I needed. Just the thought of Jason taking over the life that I thought should have been mine made me despair, even though I felt betrayed by Kelly. I always tried to be honest with her and treat her with respect, even if it wasn't mutual. I comfort in the certainty that Caitlin would eventually understand and support my decisions when she saw how our family had suffered. I am refraining from submitting an application for now. I prefer everything to be ready and waiting in the wings. I want to wait for her to take the initiative. This way I can spend more time with Kate at our family home. I understand that there will come a moment when I will have to act, but I want to wait until the very last moment when I can't handle it anymore. I told Bill I see we can leave all documents unsigned and notarized until you feel ready. I can work from home on Saturday mornings, so you can contact me on the weekend. Bill informed me we won't be able to file the documents until Monday morning, but I can arrange for someone to be at the doors when they open and submit them the same day. Bill suggested okay, we'll do that. I agreed. After saying goodbye, I took Larry's business card out of my pocket and dialed the number. Larry replied, Matt Franks, how are you okay? I replied, are you ready for mischief? I hesitated, yes, but please wait for my signal. I said, okay, no problem. What do you need to know? He asked, can we arrange a personal meeting? I asked, sure, just give me an hour. He replied, that sounds good. I replied. I was already waiting for him to pull up in the parking lot after drinking coffee and having a snack. He sat down opposite me. I want to collect all the unpleasant files, photos, videos, recordings, everything we need to figure out how to anonymously send this to Shannon Stanton, maybe by email. I explained, no problem. I know someone who works on the dark web. Larry said before ending the conversation I was thinking about posting a video on an adult website or sending inappropriate messages to Kelsey's parents or colleagues. Larry suggested he's cunning. I thought to myself, but Kelsey will still have to stay in town. I don't want her to be so ashamed that she left with Kate and she's still dear to me, even if she doesn't feel that way about me anymore. I pushed an envelope with $5,000 in cash towards Larry. This should help you get started, but if you need more, just let me know. I said. Larry took the money and nodded at me. $3,000 should be enough. Larry said despite his harsh temper, he is at least straightforward. You can keep the remaining amount as an advanced payment. I may need your special skills in the future. Don't forget to be careful. Until I get in touch with you. I want to surprise them and I have specific motives so that they can take the first action. In addition, we should collect information about his wife's health problems. Her medical background may influence our future decisions. Are you up to the task? I asked. Absolutely, he replied. Bill asked me to gather information about how Jason went to school. I need something that I can use against him if we get caught up in a custody battle. He said. I nodded in understanding and made a few notes in my notebook. After finishing our coffee, we discussed his career in law enforcement and all our mutual acquaintances. After completing the meeting, we shook hands and went our separate ways. That was 3 months ago. My thoughts were interrupted by the appearance of Bill, accompanied by his assistant and Larry. Is it time to leave? Bill asked when everyone had taken their seats. Yes, it looks like it, Larry replied. We're not sure if Kelsey has already consulted with a lawyer. Bill said. I didn't see anything in her email. I quickly added after Bill's call. I'll check again today and get an answer by Monday morning. I said. Larry grinned and gave me a mischievous wink. What about Jason? Does he have any skeletons in his closet? I asked, anticipating the gossip. Oh, definitely, Larry confirmed together with his fraternity. He was under investigation on charges of committing a crime harassment with the use of illegal drugs of girls at parties. I was given copies of the evidence, which I immediately handed over to Bill. Looked at me, nodded and said he was keeping them in case he needed them at a custody hearing, pulling out the documents we had been working hard on for the past few months. He led me to the signature line. After signing, Bill's assistant notarized the document and I turned to the group, in particular to Larry. Could you find out who Shannon Stand hired as a lawyer and tell Bill about it? If he is competent, could you share our legal file with him? I asked. Bill asked about the lawyer's competence, to which we replied that if he was not suitable then we would find a way to contact Shannon directly. Larry and I agreed that it might not be worth sending a third party. Larry nodded, sipping his coffee, and Bill turned to us. Can I pick up the documents? On Monday afternoon. I asked. I will personally hand over the documents to Kelsey and inform her of the situation before officially handing them over on Tuesday. Bill agreed, nodding and understanding. Then he instructed his assistant to prepare the server for Tuesday. Also, I would like Jason and his assistant to be served on Tuesday afternoon. I think we should also contact Shannon, as she will need information soon. Bill, please share the file with Shannon's lawyer on Monday afternoon. If he doesn't interfere with my conversation with Kelsey on Monday night, then everything should be fine by Wednesday. I said. Matt, have you thought about where Kelsey is staying on Monday night? Bill asked. Is there any problem with her staying in the house for a few days? Not until you get a restraining order and she agrees to it. I wouldn't want to sleep with her. I replied. From a legal point of view, I think it's not a problem, but it might confuse you. He said I would worry about how a more unethical lawyer might use this information. Bill remarked. Okay, I'll give her a week to find a place. I don't see anything wrong with that. I replied. Oh, you mean sleeping in the same bed? But according to our legal documents, I'm temporarily in charge of the house and Kate, right? I asked. Yes, until her lawyer files a motion and cancels it all, or until we come to a mutual agreement. Bill replied. I meant that we really sleep in the same bed. I said it can create a strange vibration when applied. Bill remarked. But don't worry, now we definitely won't sleep together. He turned to Larry and asked. Hey, what have you learned about Shannon's health? Larry replied. She has been struggling with depression and bipolar disorder for many years. The medications she was taking destroyed her sex drive. So Mr. Wonderful started looking for another place for himself. Bill jokingly added. I don't think we want to know how you found out about this. Larry just smiled and shook his head, and Bill pretended to be shocked. Does this have something to do with us? I asked. Not at the moment, they replied. This may become important later, especially during the custody discussion, when we will decide who will live with him and when we should consider including this condition in the final draft. Bill said while they were talking. Bill was diligently taking notes on his iPad. After chatting for a few more minutes, we gradually completed our strategy session and returned to our daily chores. I didn't feel well all weekend, as I couldn't get rid of the load of tasks that I had to complete on Monday. Despite my mood, Kelsey didn't seem to notice anything, which I hadn't really expected. To make my life easier, I called my in on Sunday and arranged for her to pick Caitlin up from school on Monday and leave her overnight. It would give me the opportunity to have a serious conversation with Kelsey about some important family matters. Fortunately, my aunt lived on a farm outside the city, and Caitlin really enjoyed playing with their dogs and feeding the animals. Besides, she's taking Caitlin to school on Tuesday morning. I decided that we would tell Caitlin the news on Tuesday evening. I informed Caitlin that she was going to her aunt's, and she looked worried but at the same time a little puzzled why she had to wait until Tuesday. I explained that Mom and Dad needed to be alone to discuss everything. She reluctantly agreed. I slept in a spare room that night, and again Kelsey didn't say anything about it. She seemed relieved when she saw that I had gone to sleep in the spare room on Sunday evening. I lay and thought about the upcoming conversation with Caitlin. After reviewing the checklist and confirming my plan, I finally fell asleep the next morning. I spoke with the vice president of production, informing him of the need for a week's rest. I also contacted my assistant and senior production manager to make sure they were fully informed of all the necessary details. During my absence later that day, I unexpectedly walked into Bill's office and found Larry there. I noticed a stack of documents on the table, and the bustle in the office indicated that everyone was working hard. Bill came up to me holding a stack of papers in his hands. "Matt, we filed documents with the court this morning, and here are Kelsey's documents. At your request, we have scheduled the official filing of documents at your house for 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Do you mind?" I accepted the envelopes and replied, "Yes, it suits me. I plan to convince her to take the rest of the week off. I'll let you know if there are any changes." "Great, it's okay," Bill said, taking a moment to collect his thoughts. Larry found Shannon's lawyer, who turned out to be very impressive. Bill sent him all their documents, and the lawyers seemed ready to accuse him of adultery and get a bigger share of their property than 50-50. He assured Bill that he would not take any action until the next morning, so everything looked promising. Based on recent calls and emails, Kelsey is scheduled to meet with her lawyer next week. Larry asked cautiously, "Matt, please let me know if you need any additional help." "Okay." This prompted another sharp look from Bill, indicating his concern about our situation. "I think it's okay," I assured him, hoping to avoid further complications. "It looks like Kelsey and Jason will take care of everything." After leaving Bill's office, I quickly texted Kelsey, "Will you come home at a reasonable time today around 5:30 p.m.? "Why are you asking? Is everything okay?" she asked. "It's nothing special. I just got a little distracted over the weekend and I want to catch up tonight. I have arranged with Aunt Alex that she will pick up Kate tonight and stay with her overnight." I said I decided to cook a homemade dinner. "Do you have any preferences?" I asked. "That's very nice of you. Of course I'll be home on time." She replied dinner will be served at 5:30 p.m. I said I couldn't help feeling guilty for putting her in this situation, but lately it seems to have become a habit. I hoped that she believed that I was just very sweet and affectionate. Kelsey arrived home at 5:15 p.m. and went to change. While I prepared the table and laid out the food, I poured each of us a glass of wine and had already sat down at the table when she joined me while she took leisurely sips. We shared the dishes and had a light conversation. She seemed completely unaware of what was waiting for us. After finishing the meal, we both put our favorite dishes on plates. "Did you want to plan something?" "What is it?" she asked, giving me a sidelong glance. "No, I thought that after our conversation you would want to take a week off," I replied in a monotone voice, trying not to show emotion. "Why should I do this? What's the matter?" "What is it?" she asked. "I know, Kelsey." I began putting the envelope on the table in front of her. She looked at it, then at me taking a sip of wine. "I know about your relationship with Jason and that you are going to file for divorce," I said after taking a sip of wine. She coughed slightly and stared at me blankly. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to piece together how I found out about this and what she should do in this situation. Finally, She realized what was going on and asked, "What kind of scam is this?" I told her about the meeting with the lawyer scheduled for next week, and that Jason had already filed for divorce from Shannon. "I know about your feelings for him, and that you plan to leave me and take Kate with you," I said after taking a sip of wine. She coughed slightly and stared at me blankly. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to piece together how I found out about this and what she should do in this situation. Finally, she realized what was going on and asked, "What kind of scam is this?" "I know about your feelings for him and that you plan to leave me and take Kate with you," I said after taking a sip of wine. She coughed slightly and stared at me blankly. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to piece together how I found out about this and what she should do in this situation. Finally, she realized what was going on and asked, "What kind of scam is this?" I opened the envelope and handed her the photos. When she looked through them, her eyes widened and she lowered her glass. I watched as tears welled up in her eyes and she began to hiccup, a sign of her overwhelming emotions. "I'm so sorry, Matthew. I never wanted this to happen," she whispered, her voice breaking. She fell silent, staring at the table in front of her. "I understand, Kelsey. I've known about your plans for a long time. I've had time to think about it," I reassured her. "I am deeply disappointed by your actions and it causes me great pain." I took a break to pull myself together and suppress my growing anger. "All I have to do is find out if I did something that pushed you to Jason?" I asked. Her response was a quick denial, followed by a guilty and ashamed retreat to the table. She claimed that I didn't do anything like that. "You didn't do anything to push me away. You were a wonderful husband and father. I just fell in love with him myself," she confessed, making me feel both disappointed and relieved. I guess there's nothing I can do if she just stopped loving me and chose Jasby over me. He managed to win her over and replace me in her heart. Now I was powerless to stop it. Our marriage has come to an end and only the formalities remain. I wrote down the terms of our divorce and gave them to her. "Here is the agreement that I propose. I've already completed all the necessary paperwork, so you don't have to worry about it if you agree with my proposal. The main points will be as follows: the prenuptial agreement remains in force, so there is no need to discuss my trust. I propose to sell all the common property and divide the proceeds equally, including the house. Because I initiated the application process first, I'm asking for full custody of Caitlin and minimal alimony. I added I am ready to take a flexible approach to organizing visits. I will continue to provide Caitlin with insurance, but you will have to get your own insurance. You can keep your own funds investments received in marriage and inheritance from your mother. I have no intention of taking what is rightfully yours. All the investments that we have made together will be divided equally. Caitlin and I will stay in the house until it is sold." I replied, "I'm also contributing 20,000 from my trust to help you settle in. I advise you to think about drawing up a prenuptial agreement to secure your property in case you and Jason carry out your plans. The main thing for me is that you don't suffer any losses. I want you to be independent and self-sufficient, and I don't need any financial support from you." I finished while she was processing the information she received. I paused to observe her reaction. "I think I should take Caitlin with me. She will need a mother when she grows up," she said firmly. "I completely agree with you, but this situation can be resolved remotely through visits and phone calls. To be honest, I don't trust Jason with our daughter. I know that he intends to manipulate her against me with gifts and his faint politeness. Since he cannot have a child of his own, it looks like he wants mine. I have already made concessions by allowing him to have my wife, but I will not allow him to have my daughter. If necessary, I am ready to discuss the issue of custody." I added I made this offer as a gesture of goodwill when I noticed how red her face was during a stormy conversation about Kate and Jason. "He will never hurt her, and this decision ultimately depends on me. Getting rid of her mother's influence is not a positive step in this process," she replied threateningly. "No matter what, she will stay with me until we come up with another plan. You can stay in the master bedroom for a few nights or even a week until everything is sorted out. I suggested my love for you remains unshakable, despite the difficulties we face. I believe that we were one team ready to fight the world together, but your actions cause me great pain and confusion. I will do my best to handle the situation with mercy and compassion, but my world is crumbling around me. I don't want to hurt you the way you hurt me. Please understand that if you escalate the situation or involve others in it, I will not hesitate to take self-defense measures. Remember that I have resources at my disposal that surpass anything you or Jason possess. I replied calmly. My behavior had changed, and now she could hear the rage in my voice. I'm capable of being tough when I'm under pressure. She's seen this side of me in the past, so let's calmly sort out this situation and let the lawyers deal with the rest. It is very important for me to remain polite and respectful to you whenever we communicate. It's important for our daughter Caitlin to see how we get along. I am determined that we both play an active role in her life. I reported, hoping to avoid a long and bitter argument. I have free time until the end of the week, and according to the requirements of the law, you must be officially served, which should happen at our house at 9:00 a.m. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable at work, so maybe you should take a few days off too. I understand that it will be difficult for both of us to be at home at this time, but I think it would be better to meet with Caitlin tomorrow evening or leave her at home on Wednesday to discuss the situation. I suggested. Kelsey had already stopped eating and didn't seem to be feeling well. I think she finally realized the seriousness of her actions. She can only blame herself for the consequences. I was happy and didn't pay attention until she broke everything. She looked at me with a puzzled expression and confessed, you obviously outsmarted us. Somehow you managed to plan everything in advance. She promised that she would get in touch with work quickly and stay at home until Wednesday. How about leaving Caitlin at her aunt's until tomorrow and bringing her back Wednesday morning so we can have a proper conversation? I asked. Kelsey seemed to agree with this plan, giving me a slight nod as she sorted through the paperwork. I wished her good night. Feeling that she needed time to think about the news, she retreated into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Since I had already moved most of my daily clothes and necessities to the spare room, there shouldn't have been any more problems. I contacted my aunt and told her about the family business we were working on, and she kindly agreed to leave Caitlin for an extra night and bring her back on Wednesday morning. I also talked to Caitlin and informed her that she would not go to school the next day. She was a little puzzled but didn't object. I assured her that my mother and I would clarify everything on Wednesday. While I was tidying up and getting ready for bed, I heard Kel talking to herself behind the closed door, as if she was having a phone conversation. Later, I heard quiet sobs. She was grieving that our marriage was over. The next morning, I heard Kelsey get ready for work early and come downstairs dressed casually at 9:00 sharp. She opened the door to receive her package, except for the photos and transcripts she had been looking through in her room the night before. Right after that, she hurriedly grabbed her keys and purse and hurried out the door. She didn't specify where she was going, but I got the impression that she was meeting with Jason, her lawyer, or someone else who might be on her side. Later that day, Bill called to say that Jason and their company had received our claims. To my surprise, Jason also received a counterclaim from Shannon. Bill stressed the importance of remaining vigilant and careful. As there were rumors about Jason's threats against me, I never thought Jason could be so stupid, considering he always had everything he wanted. But just in case, I took my .45 caliber pistol out of the gun safe, made sure it was loaded, cocked and locked, and put it on a chair sitting down to watch TV. A few hours later, while I was standing at the sink, a black BMW pulled up to my house and an angry Jason got out of it with a baseball bat. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I quickly returned to the chair, where my mobile phone was waiting for me. Feeling safe behind the locked door, I quickly dialed 911 and reported that my wife's boyfriend, was outside with a baseball bat. Several cars were sent to my address. When I heard another car pull up to the house and then there were screams, I realized that it was Kelsey. Suddenly there was a loud squeal in the house. My heart started pounding when the front door shattered and Jason stormed into the house in a rage. "You bastard, you got me fired. You ruined my divorce," he growled, foaming at the mouth. I put my right hand on the butt of the gun. The feeling of it calmed me down. Jason was swinging the bat and I heard Kelsey screaming, begging him to calm down. "I took your wife and now I'm going to end you and take your daughter," he shouted. I let him walk another 5 feet before pulling out the gun. It was clear from the narrowed eyes that his decisions were questionable. He held the bat high, but its effectiveness at a distance of 25 feet was questionable. The sound of the shot from the chamber was loud and sharp. I was always taught to hit the target 3 times, so I quickly fired 2 shots in a row. When Jason slowed down, his next step seemed hesitant to me, as a result of which he stumbled and fell just as the 3rd bullet flew out of the barrel. I noticed a sudden movement at the door, but I was too engrossed in what I was doing to pay attention to it. Suddenly a bullet flew past and bit into the broken front door. Nearly missing Kelsey, Jason collapsed to the ground, first on his knees and then face forward. A cacophony of screams and the deafening sound of a gunshot filled my ears, making me realize how loud it was. In such a cramped room, sirens wailed in the distance, followed by frantic screams from the police. Unaware of the gravity of the situation, they put Kelsey on her stomach and handcuffed her in front of an open door. Her screams and protests rang out continuously. The unfolding events stunned me, and finally my attention was attracted by the gun pointed at my face and the officer's urgent commands to stop, and dropped the weapon. When I came to my senses, I obeyed his order and handed over the gun. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of chaos and stress. Jason was injured by a policeman at the scene of the crime. Later I learned from police reports and witness statements that he had simultaneously received my lawsuit and updated divorce papers from his wife. It didn't take him long to realize that the incriminating photos had been obtained from me. Kelsey stood next to him while he opened the envelope he received from his wife and confirmed that she also had a set of these photos. Soon after, they were both summoned to the vice president's office, where they confessed their affair. Unaware of the possible consequences, the managers decided to fire the managing director for communicating with the subordinate. Knowing that my application would not be considered, this decision made me the object of Jason's anger, who believed that I had offended him by speaking out against his actions. Inflamed with anger, he took a souvenir bat from his office and headed to my house, wanting revenge for what he perceived as betrayal. Kelsey spotted him from the window of the conference room on the 2nd floor and quickly guessed where he was going, hurrying to intercept him in the driveway. She tried to defuse the situation before he could harm me. None of them knew that I had been warned of their imminent appearance and was ready to confront them. Trying to prevent Jason from entering the house, Kelsey got a black eye from his outburst of rage. Fortunately, she escaped further injury, but the ordeal haunted her for several more months in the form of recurring nightmares. I've only spoken to her a couple of times. Amid the chaos of police interrogation, court hearings, and courtroom visits, we never entered into a deep conversation about the events that took place in our house. Kelsey was just a shadow of her old self. The loss of her husband and daughter in less than a day had a big impact on her. She has never been able to recover from this tragedy, despite the fact that they kept in touch with her during the divorce process. After it was completed, she seemed to gradually distance herself. Kelsey did not resist and did not hire a lawyer to challenge the divorce. As a result, I had no difficulty getting custody of Caitlin. To my amazement, she constantly refused to fulfill her financial obligations. Bill held on to her share for a while, but eventually returned it to me a year later. She never returned to our house but lived with her family until she disappeared during the attack on me. Jason was severely injured during detention and spent a long time in the hospital. After that, he completely changed. He became very fixated on his failure and led her reclusive lifestyle. Despite several supervised visits to Caitlin, they were often uncomfortable or unproductive. I made sure that Caitlin was always ready for these visits, regardless of whether we had heard of Kelsey or not. Unfortunately, Kelsey only appeared 4 times. I heard that Kelsey was addicted to painkillers and other prescription drugs that were supposed to help her find peace and stability. By the time she disappeared, she had lost her job, friends, and all her money. Neither Caitlin nor I nor anyone else who knew her had the opportunity to contact her, and she never contacted us. Her disappearance left us without a wife and mother. As a result, we had to sell the house without knowing what had become of her. My daughter and I have been making efforts to rebuild our lives after a traumatic event. We sought help from psychologists to cope with the pain. I went to counseling for 6 months, but in the end I had to put the pain on the back burner and focus on raising my daughter and moving forward. Caitlin, on the other hand, spent several years with a counselor trying to come to terms with the divorce and Kelsey's disappearance. She had to solve a lot of psychological problems. Took me 3 years to finally realize that I was ready to start dating again. A few months after this realization, I met an amazing woman named Jo. She treated our past with incredible understanding and respect. Our relationship developed slowly, much more slowly than either of us would have liked, but eventually we took the next step and entered into a physical relationship. After about 16 months, we decided to get married. Jo and I raised Cin like our own daughter, but we never felt the need to expand the family. Our lives became more stable and complete as we moved forward together over time. Our biggest problems became related to the turning points in Caitlin's life, her graduation from high school and college. Despite the fact that Larry was repeatedly hired in an attempt to find Kelsey, every lead eventually led to a dead end. Kelsey was believed to have met a tragic end in isolation and despair. It was a difficult ordeal, but we persevered and eventually found the way out.